Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the 2018 Berkeley Lab Research Slam. There any science fans in the house here? All right, really? That's not very sciencey. Come on, you can do better. Rock and roll. I'm David Gilbert. I'm your MC for the event today. I'm from the Joint Genome Institute, soon to be your neighbor in the Integrative Genomics building, along with the DOE Systems Knowledge Base, KBase, in about 438,000 minutes from now. So just around the corner. So we're not alone here. Potentially, there are people listening in on our live stream from 195 countries around this great green planet of ours. It's so quiet. It's like a library in here. I really appreciate you being here to help celebrate Postdoc Week. Postdoc. Any postdocs in the house? Yeah? Any former postdocs in the house? All right. But first, a public service announcement. Safe slamming is no accident. So, for those of you new to this tectonic plane here just on the edge of the Hayward Fault, occasionally we get a little rock and rolling going on here, and if that should happen, aside from your enthusiasm for our finalists, I encourage you to duck down, protected by your seats. When it settles down, orderly, walk out. Our folks will guide you in that direction. For those down here, you might be better served by going out that door. If somebody collapses in the meantime, right around the corner, there's a defibrillator. So somebody else can take over for me when I go down. So, with that notice, oh, right, I'm supposed to be doing this. That's basically it. Now we can get down to what we're really here for. So, let's start with some observations from our director, Mike Witherall. Give it up for Mike, everybody.
Hey. So, as I give the State of the Lab talks to the laboratory, I realize what I've been missing is a warm-up act. So I think I ought to institute this, have someone to warm up the audience before I start every time. So first of all, I'd like to say something about what postdocs mean to this laboratory and every research institution. Every time I talk about the laboratory, I talk about how part of what we provide to the nation is more or less all of you. That is to say, bringing the best and brightest young scientists in the country to this laboratory to work on problems of national interest rather than, for example, weaponizing ads. That's part of what we do here. That's what we're trying to do. And you will go on to careers in laboratories and universities and private industry and maybe even running for office for some of you, let's hope. And what all those have in common is that you will need to communicate these complex issues in science technology to people who don't know as much about it as you do. And it's hard, it's important, and there's nothing to do but get up there and do it. So my confession is, when I was at your stage in career, I was the worst at this. This was the hardest thing for me to do. I was terrible. I'm average now, you know, and that was hard work over years and years of career. So I say this is our top group. This is the top list. This is very important for you in your career, but it's actually very important for the country that we have people who can articulate these issues. Because, as you might have noticed, not everybody in our society understands evidence and science very well. And this is, in the end, all of you have to take this on as your challenge. So, you know, well, 3 minutes is a start. So, you know, this will, so anyway, thank you very much for all you do for the laboratory, and have a great time today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mike. In the far reaches of the auditorium, we have our finalists, the survivors of the original 32. And I really Give mad props to the 32 who stepped forward to be our ambassadors, and you, the last dozen remaining here today. So, it's an interactive experience. All of you shall judge the performance that you're about to see, as we judge most performances. And to be sure to consult your ballots before you. Does everybody have paper and pencil? Many of you, this may be the first time you've ever used those media before. So it isn't really a game unless there are some rules, so let's go through a little rule, shall we? Oh, but first, like we don't know this already, let's figure it out. No cell phones, please, or flash photography. If you need to leave the auditorium, except in absolute emergency, especially if after a natural disaster, please wait in between the speakers so that we can offer them our undivided attention or undistracted attention. Our speakers are going to have 3 minutes to encapsulate their careers in science to date. So it's pretty tough, so let's show our respect. And our timekeeper is going to let us know when there's 10 seconds left. She's going to wave that green, there it is, the green sign, so that you'll know, you'll get those hands ready to start clapping. When that red one goes up, very good, excellent. All right, moving on. So you'll have a chance to vote for your People's Choice Awards, which will also be announced at the reception, which I hope you'll all be able to join us for, following this in the cafeteria patio. And we will collect your ballots on the way out. In fact, you will not be able to leave unless we get your ballots. So for those of you who are social, there you are at Berkeley Postdoc. All right, so trivia, eh? So in between each of our speakers today, we're going to have a little intermezzo whereby it's going to charge your brain with some facts from Berkeley Lab. And you too can win lavish prizes right here. Show us what a lavish prize looks like. Come on. Now, is that not lavish? All right, then. Can only answer once, and then you're disqualified whether you get it right or wrong. So don't be raising your hand all the time and stealing the limelight from your colleagues. And only raise your hand if you think you know the answer. And a runner will come with the mic, wait for the mic, because of all the hordes of people out there waiting for that very answer of yours. So we'll be patient and wait for that magic moment. And you will receive that prize and more, so much more. The accolades of everyone in this room and around the world, no doubt. So it also isn't a contest unless we have some judges, right? And we do have some judges here in the front row, and I appreciate their presence today. And we will go through them alphabetically. So we have John German. John, please stand. John is the lab's Chief Communications Officer and leads the lab's employee communications, science communications, media relations. He came to the lab just 7 months ago from Arizona State University. That's a Sun Devil, are you? Sun Devil. All right. Where he directed the strategic communications and media relations for research. Prior to that, he was at the Santa Fe Institute, and he instituted their first communications program there. And he also served time, if that doesn't sound too prison-like, at Sandia National Lab as a senior communicator. Kishore Hari, thank you very much for joining us tonight, Kishore, or this afternoon, as the case may be. He's a longtime science communicator and educator and host of Mother Jones' weekly podcast, Inquiring Minds, and the science correspondent for Adam Savage's Tested.com. He's been the judge of 3 slams at the University of California, San Francisco, which is really the benchmark for this event itself, and also the director of the Bay Area Science Festival. Anybody been to the Bay Area Science Festival? All right, get with it. It's a great event. Thanks, Kishore. Really appreciate you coming today. Chris Culp from Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory. That's the other lab about 42 miles to the east of here, which is not in Berkeley. She joined Livermore as a postdoc to do research on the delivery of, the role of dietary carcinogens in the development of human cancer. Does that sound about right? She also has worked on advanced spectrometry for determining disease effects on single cells and tissues. How am I doing now? I feel like my DNA repair genes on my tire kicking in. Okay, Michelle Lee, thank you very much. Give it up for Michelle. Michelle currently serves as the Berkeley Lab's interim Chief Human Resources Officer. She's been with the University of California system for 20 years. She began her career at UC Davis, where she was Chief Administrative Officer, presiding over, imagine this, wildlife, fish, conservation biology, environmental toxicology, land, air, and water resources. It's like the whole world, right? You ran the whole world, basically. So this, by contrast, is nothing running HR, I'm sure. Michelle has been at the lab for 8 years and has supported multiple divisions. Thank you very much for that. Elsie Quate Randall, thank you. An Irish woman by way of Canada. What's not to like about an Irish Canadian? She's the Chief Technology Transfer Officer and the head of the Intellectual Property Office, or IPO. She began her research career in biochemistry and molecular biology in the National Laboratory System, mind you, and served as a postdoc at Brookhaven and then a PI at Argonne National Laboratory. Thanks, Elsie. All right. Seems like that's enough judges, 5 judges, plenty, tiebreaker in there. So let's talk about the criteria by which we are passing our judgments today. I'm not passing judgments because I don't have a vote. All right, judging criteria. Background and significance of research. Can you help the audience understand that concept that you're trying to get across? Is it clear, logical? Are they avoiding all those nasty nomenclature-like words? Did they capture your attention at all? Did they? Did they have presence on stage? Enthusiasm? So let's say for yourselves. Are we ready to hear from our finalists? Please. Leading off, Venkatesh Iyer. Crank that up.
Do you know the name of the most expensive physics experiment in the world? It's the Large Hadron Collider at CERN in Geneva, Switzerland. It was in the news in the year 2012 for finding the Higgs boson, a vital piece in the standard model of particle physics. But what is the standard model of particle physics? We know that matter around us is made of molecules. Molecules are made of atoms, and atoms are made of protons, neutrons, and electrons. Protons and neutrons, in turn, are made of smaller particles, quarks, and gluons. Also, we know of 4 fundamental forces. There is the gravitational force that is responsible for the attraction that keeps planets in orbits around the sun. There is the electromagnetic force that is responsible for the attraction between protons and electrons that keeps the atom stable. There is the strong nuclear force that is responsible for keeping the nucleus stable. And there is the weak nuclear force that is responsible for radioactive decay. This theory, with the 4 fundamental forces and the fundamental particles, quarks, gluons, electrons, the Higgs boson, and quite a few others, together is called the standard model of particle physics. And it explains the world around us extremely well. However, there are a few loose ends. For example, there are indications of the existence of mysterious particles called dark matter particles that exist very weakly with other existing matter. Also, the Higgs boson that was discovered in 2012, there are indications that it might be composed of smaller new type of particles. And in my research, in collaboration with colleagues at the University of Colorado, I explore this possibility. Specifically, I study a theory where the Higgs boson is composed of smaller, new type of exotic quarks bound together very strongly by a new kind of force similar to the strong nuclear force. And this theory is interesting because in addition to explaining the structure of the Higgs boson, these exotic quarks can be put together to construct different kinds of dark matter particles, thereby addressing the two issues that I mentioned before. In other words, we're hitting two targets with a single arrow. In my research, I perform large-scale Monte Carlo simulations of this theory to compute the properties of particles that must exist in this theory. These are then predictions that can be checked at current or future particle collider or other physics experiments. If these experiments find these particles with these properties, that would imply that this theory is realized in nature and we would have understood what lays inside the Higgs boson. Also, if these exotic quarks do exist, that would open up a new frontier for particle physics research. Thank you.
On time and under budget. All right, is everybody dialed in? This is where you have to step up and deliver the answer to. Are you ready? Okay. Which of the lab's 13 Nobel Prize medals was stolen? Hands up in the air. Mike Runner. There's a ringer right there. Okay, Helen, pressure's on. Which Lawrence? John? Oh, Ernest. And the answer is Ernest Orlando Lawrence. Give that woman a prize. Thank you, Helen Kadamatori. Okay, then. Next up, Kristen Buchner.
All of us are 60% water, yet 2 billion people worldwide don't have reliable access to clean water. We have many methods to purify water, but one that is both scalable and energy efficient is desalination by reverse osmosis. Desalination just means taking the salt out of salt water. People found that you can push salt water through a membrane made of a polymer similar to nylon, and the water will go through while the salt stays behind. There is a catch, though. Although this material holds back sodium and chloride ions, and therefore you can use it to desalinate seawater, other contaminants, sometimes much bigger, they just go through. So you might be dealing with groundwater from a well, and that might have arsenate contamination. Or you have city wastewater with huge pharmaceutical molecules. If that's the case, this method doesn't work for you. But if we're trying to give clean water to the world, we need to use all available water sources for that. So what we need is a way to understand what goes on at the surface of these desalination materials. And that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to figure out how exactly water is able to go into this material and through to the other side, and what chemical interactions stop some contaminants and let the other ones pass. I do this at the Advanced Light Source, where I have access to highly brilliant X-ray light. And my samples are really thin films of the same polymer, but just a few molecules thick. These films have really smooth surfaces, and that's really helpful for me because I can focus only on the fundamental chemical interaction and not be distracted by roughness-related effects in the experiment. I take these films and shoot X-rays at them, and then all the chemical species that are present, they interact with the light, and they give off photoelectrons as their reaction product. All the photoelectrons have a certain speed which we detect, and if we notice a tiny change in the speed, that tells us what chemical reactions are happening in our system. Normally, these experiments are done in ultra-high vacuum, but our system is optimized to tolerate higher pressure, and that means after I characterize all the components of the polymer, I can actually add water to my system. And when I do that, I observe how the water goes into the membrane and it actually chemically interacts with the polymer right before my eyes. So now we're at a really exciting point in this project where we're adding different contaminants to our system. We study the surface interaction in a chemical sense. And that should help us to figure out why the hell tiny salt ions are rejected by this membrane, but much bigger contaminants just go through. And this understanding is key to make clean water no matter what source. Thank you.
Thanks, Kristen. All right, you got to up your game with this trivia thing. We need more involvement here. Are you ready? Come on, you can do this. Only 2 contestants on the Fox television show Are You Smarter Than a Fifth Grader went on to win the $1 million prize. Name the contestant that worked at Berkeley Lab. Hands up. Okay.
Hey.
Nobel laureate George Smoot.
And the answer is George Smoot, everybody!
Yay.
Way to go! Bravo! Thank you. Okay, ready for more? I give you Isfar Cordova! Oh. Gotta crank that up.
All right, so I'd like to start today by asking you all to take a second and just think of an image that reminds you of nanotechnology. What do you see? Now, since most of the structures on the scale of a nanometer cannot be seen by a conventional microscope, more likely than not, the image in your mind right now was originally collected using an electron microscope. Advanced imaging techniques, such as the electron microscope, are key to enabling us to make progress in addressing many of the grand challenges faced by today's society, whether that's battery lifetime, solar cell efficiency, or even capturing carbon from our atmosphere in the hopes of converting into a renewable fuel source. Now, the idea behind using these new imaging techniques is because we can actually fabricate structures on the nanometer scale in order to make novel functional devices. Unfortunately, despite all of these advances on the fabrication end of things, we have continued to struggle in our ability to image buried structures, especially interfaces, which are key because they tend to be where most of the activity happens for these devices. I work at Berkeley Lab's Advanced Light Source Division, where our mission is to help our research community tackle many of these imaging challenges by using X-rays produced from a synchrotron. Unlike an X-ray source that you would find at your doctor's office, a synchrotron is not only able to give you a much brighter source of X-rays, but it's also particularly useful because you can tune the energy of the X-rays in order to collect the desired image. Our specific technique in my team is an unconventional imaging technique whereby we scatter X-rays of a significant fraction of a sample in order to collect the structure, or average structure rather, with sub-nanometer precision. In addition, if you're able to tune the energy of the X-rays, not only can you probe deeper into your sample, but you can also resonate with a specific chemistry in order to highlight its scattering signal so you can distinguish it from the rest. In addition, most recently, I have been collaborating with the Molecular Foundry's nanofabrication team in helping to adopt a new patterning approach to further enhance this resonance scattering behavior in order to give us even finer detailed insight into the behavior of interfaces during a specific function of a device. Now, what's specifically exciting about this development is that not only can we now collect this data using just the flash of the synchrotron beam, but now we may also be able to deploy this using newly developed tabletop X-ray sources. Now, most of today's researchers do not have access to a synchrotron. Therefore, it's very important for us to be able to develop resonance scattering capabilities using these tabletop X-ray sources. My dream is, whether you're a semiconductor researcher working in a nanofab facility or a graduate student working on developing the next generation solar cell. Yeah. That you'll be able to see your favorite scattering pattern as opposed to a black and white electron microscope image. Thank you.
Thanks, Cesar. Thank you. Back to trivia. What crazy winter sport was set up on Hearst Avenue, right below the lab in 1934 and 35, and it's going to be resurrected in 2018 if it snows here? Anybody? Answer? Seriously? Come on. Here we go, right here. Up, up, up.
Ice hockey?
Ice hockey. Anybody else?
That is correct.
Oh, there's more. I'm just guessing. Maybe not. I don't know, though. But thanks for trying.
Bobsledding.
Do I hear bobsledding? Yeah? Ski jump tournament? What?
Wah, wah.
Mike, would that be okay? Yeah, okay. Should do that again? Should we do that again? All right, what do you think? All right, anybody, who's got the answer? We got gifts here. Right there, sir. What? Ski jump tournament? Excellent, congratulations. Bravo. And you get to be the first victim down Hearst. Right, okay. All right, your attention, please. Sham Dwarknarak.
So the process of discovering and developing a new material really hasn't changed much in the past 100 years. It's a lot of luck, a little bit of intuition, and lots of trial and error. In fact, the reason it took 18 years for the lithium-ion battery to go from discovery in a lab to something you and I could buy in 1991 was exactly this fact. Now, if we want to use materials discovery as a vehicle to solve our energy challenges, this is just too slow. And I'm trying to speed this up by using quantum simulations of hundreds of thousands of never-before-made materials. Now, if they've never been made before, you may ask, can someone actually make them? Well, that's a little bit too hard of a question to answer. So if I turn it around and at least ask, can I at least say if the material can't be made? It turns out that may be feasible. In fact, the materials I'm interested in are crystalline materials. That means they have a nice periodic arrangement that makes a special pattern that gives it its desirable properties. A lot of materials that we have today, such as the glasses in our buildings, in our cars, and our projectors, are amorphous. That means the atoms are just kind of randomly dispersed. If I can compute the energy of that random arrangement and compare that with the energy of my special pattern, I can figure out when that pattern is going to fall apart. I can basically tell you if that pattern can be made. Now, even if I could tell you that this material can be made, actually going ahead and making it is very, very difficult. Imagine being asked to make a perfect sourdough bread, but you've only ever made cake before. It's going to be pretty hard. Now, if you look at researchers that make new materials, the biggest driver for success is the intuition in choosing the base material that they grow the new concept on. Now, what we did was use those hundreds of thousands of simulations and combine them with the latest and greatest in high school geometry to basically develop a data-driven method that recommends a better base material to grow on. And what this did was allow our collaborators to make some of our wacky ideas. Now, I've addressed two specific problems. How can you make a material, and can it actually be made? These are usually problems that occur in the development timeline and cause that 18-year window. By addressing these in the discovery process, we're hoping to reduce that timeline and get new concepts out to market to actual real-world energy impact. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Sham. Okay, all you trivia fans out there, tension is mounting. That ski jump one was already over, so you can't get that one again. Okay, ready? In the CBS comedy, The Big Bang Theory, one of the lab's Nobel laureates was discussed by Sheldon on 2 different episodes. These are too easy, right? Which Nobel laureate was discussed? I can't hear you. George Smoot. I know it isn't E.O. Lawrence. Saul, do we have Saul Perlmutter? Yes, we do. Saul up on a ladder. Good work. Give it up. That's great. The bearer of all gifts. Arnaud Everard.
Have you ever heard of the Internet of Things? It's a wireless connected network of devices that can tell us something about the world. For example, we could put it on the top of the Golden Gate Bridge, so it can warn us before it's about to collapse. Or we could put it in a parking spot, so we can know if it's already taken or not. All these devices, they need energy. And the energy is there, it's everywhere. It's in the wind, it's in the sea, it's on the car, on a distant road. It's there just there for us to take it. All this vibrational energy is for us to take, and that's what we did in our material. We made a piezoelectric material which can capture this energy and put it to the devices. These materials have an internal electrical moment. If you hit them, they will start to vibrate along this moment. This vibration then turns into electrical energy, and that's how we get some energy out of it. Some microwatts of power. That's not enough to power the modern day technologies. They're just LEDs or microprocessors. They need milliwatts of power, so we need more energy than this. For this, we can explain a little bit about symmetry. These materials have a highly symmetric direction. If you hit them, they can only move along the symmetry direction. And that's limiting the amount of power it can generate. However, there are some materials which are a little bit rotated from this. And since they're a little bit rotated, now if we hit them, they can rotate further. And that is the key to get higher energy output from these materials. The rotation gives the most energy. And we can get all the way to milliwatts of power, which we need for devices. Every good story, though, has a monster. In this case, the monster is called lead. All these materials, which are a little bit rotated, the lower symmetry, they all contain lead. And we didn't want to put lead in the environment. So what we did, we used a trick. We took a non-lead containing material. Or actually, we took 2 of them. We put them really close together. We started matching them, and we started to bridge them from one to the other. By bridging them, if we now hit them with some vibration, it can also start to rotate, mimicking the lead case. And in this way, we can generate a highly efficient, non-toxic piezoelectric material. The song you heard when I walked off stage is called Little Lights. It's my dream to cover not only the Golden Gate Bridge, but the whole world in little lights, powered by piezo.
Thanks, Arna. I don't need a detector to tell me that all the parking spaces are already taken. Okay, trivia fans, it's going to get harder now. Going to have to up your game. Are you ready? Yeah? Okay, then. Which US presidents have visited Berkeley Lab? The answer is John F. Kennedy. All right, settle down. Sinead Griffin.
Scientists, are you ready? First question. Dark matter.
We find something if we don't know where it is or what exactly it is we're looking for. Picture this, you wake up at midnight, stumble out of bed, and you hit the bedside table. This is actually surprisingly similar to how physicists are searching for the mysterious and elusive dark matter, which makes up about 25% of our known universe. Well, what we do know about dark matter is, well, that it's dark. It doesn't interact with light the way normal materials do. Actually, it's quite similar to your physicist at a party in that it doesn't really interact very much at all. Since the beginning of humankind, we've looked to the night sky to answer questions about life, the universe, and everything. Ancient astronomers hypothesized that night and day was a battle between the moon and the sun, each temporarily succeeding before this mighty battle continued again. Since the beginning of humans, we've first used our naked eyes and then developed more and more advanced telescopes to look at the night sky. And one such observation by Vera Rubin found that the rotations of our galaxies couldn't be described by material that we can see. It had to be described by material that we can't see, our elusive dark matter. So, we know that dark matter has mass because it changes the rotations of these galaxies, but how do we detect it if we can't see it? Well, since it has mass, we know that it'll bump into things that get in its way, like our curious incident of the bedside table in the nighttime. So, if we think about materials that it bumps into, we can think about detecting it. However, to date, all of the attempts to do it this way have actually evaded detection. The reason for this is that if we want to detect something that it bumps off, the thing that it bumps off needs to be light enough to be moved by the bumping, but it also can't be too light that we can't actually detect it. This Goldilocks conundrum brings us to the forefront of dark matter detection. What I do is look for new materials that are sensitive enough to detect very light dark matter. In fact, the detector materials need to be light enough to interact with this light dark matter, and one such material is known as a Dirac electron. These are really weird particles that act almost like they have no mass at all. So if a dark matter particle comes in and hits off one of these Dirac electrons, we can actually detect it by this deflection. This is actually one of the most sensitive proposals to date to detect dark matter. And if it works, it could answer what is arguably one of the biggest open questions in physics. If we know how to detect these invisible particles, we'll be able to probe them further and start to further unravel the mysteries of our universe.
Dothraki electron. You heard it here first before the next season of Game of Thrones. Trivia. This physicist has been called the First Lady of Physics, the Chinese Madame Curie, and the Queen of Nuclear Research. She worked with Ernest Orlando Lawrence and Emilio Segre in the early 1940s, then spent most of her career at Columbia University. I'm giving you $1 if you can get this one. In addition to the lavish prize. I know the pressure's on now. Judges? Ding, 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 ding. Bravo, sir. I'll give you that buck later. Okay, then. Lauren Louie.
What is war good for? Well, for microbes, single-celled organisms like bacteria, it's a pretty big deal. And these microbial wars are a big deal for us humans too. Have you ever accidentally left your food out overnight? Maybe some leftovers you had out to cool, and then you woke up in the morning and you ask yourself, do I have to throw it out? How about if I microwave it for a long time to kill all the bacteria, I can still eat it? Well, that doesn't necessarily make it safe. You could still be one of the 48 million people that have food poisoning, or one of the 3,000 that die from it every year in the US. So why doesn't microwaving make it safe? Well, it's because it's not just the bacteria that can make you sick. It's because it's the toxins that they are making all night that can make you sick. And microwaving does not get rid of these toxins. Bacteria make these toxins to fight other microbes, such as fungi and other bacteria. Now, you might be thinking, I don't really care about how microbes live and die. I'm just going to throw out my food now. But wait, microbial warfare is not just another source of food poisoning. Microbial wars take place in the ocean, in industry, in agriculture. These things are affecting everything, including our body's immune system. Microbes affect us and the earth. So the heart of my research is discovering the rules by which microbes play nice or not so nice with each other. Once we discover what these rules are, we can predict, control, and design what these communities are doing. This is really, really powerful. Predict, control, and design. For example, one of my projects is designing a microbial community that can help plants fight off pathogens. Specifically, what I'm looking at is how what the food they're eating changes their warlike tendencies. A lot of scientists grow their bacteria in maybe 1, maybe 3 different types of food sources. I grow mine in 96. And I also do this in high throughput, which means that I run all my samples in parallel, which makes my experiments more efficient. What I've discovered is that depending on what the microbes eat, they either display warlike or peaceful tendencies. They'll make or not make the toxins that kill other microbes. So I'm also working with other Berkeley Lab scientists to discover what these toxins are in high throughput. And I'm also using high throughput methods to discover what genes are important in these interactions. These include the toxin-producing genes and the genes that are important for resisting these toxins. So the next time you put away your leftovers, I hope you remember the microbial war and peace that's happening all around you.
Thank you, Lauren. Trivia again. Lavish prizes available. Which 2003 hit film featured a gamma ray source being hurled through the roof of Berkeley Lab's Advanced Light Source? It's an easy one. We're just giving them away here. Anybody? The judges? I think we give it to them. Thank you, Hulk fans. Bravo. The tension mounts. Come on, home stretch. Leanne Moreau.
Maybe you heard on the news back in 2011 about how around 500,000 people in Fukushima, Japan needed to evacuate their homes as a result of radioactive material contamination from an explosion that damaged the nuclear power plant there. To this day, there are hundreds of square miles of uninhabitable land. You can imagine then why nuclear energy has concerned the general public who care about their safety. And yet we weighed this, against the potential for nuclear power to provide a safe, clean source of energy for our future. For example, 1/3 of the state of California could be powered by a current level of nuclear power plant that we have today. Now, this means that we as scientists need to find ways of making nuclear fuel reactions safer and more efficient. Luckily, there is a solution. It turns out that we need to go down to the nanoscale. Now, for reference, a nanometer is about how long your fingernail just grew while I said that. Well, when we make nuclear fuels with nanometer-sized particles, they demonstrate properties that can improve their safety and efficiency. So that's great, but we don't know why this is. And this is because we don't understand how radioactive materials behave at the nanoscale. So this is where our team comes in. We developed a method to make and study nanoparticles that mimic nanometer scale materials in nuclear fuel materials. And the way that we can reduce the amount of radioactive material that we use, which makes it both safer to use, to handle, and also minimizes the amount of radioactive waste that is generated. Our method works by incorporating a starting molecule into a porous template, and then we can heat up those molecules to form nanoparticles. We can control the size of the nanoparticles by varying the size of the pores in our template, and we can explore a variety of potential fuel compositions by changing the molecule that we start with. Now, we know that our method is working because we have microscope images which show us nanoparticles that are the same size as the pores of our template embedded throughout the template material. But if we want to understand how the nanoparticles are behaving differently than their larger bulk material counterparts, we need to look at their structure on an even smaller length scale, down to the level of individual atoms. And this is where an advanced characterization technique called X-ray spectroscopy comes to our rescue, by allowing us to look at these individual arrangements of atoms within our materials and compare them with bulk. It turns out that the nanoparticle structure is vastly different. Think much more disordered, for example. Think a pile of bricks versus a brick wall. Different, right? You can imagine this leads to very different properties. And it's these differences in structure that lead to the differences we see in nuclear fuel behavior. And if we can then optimize these materials for use in nuclear fuels, we should be able to make a safer future for us and provide energy for the entire state of California.
Thank you, Leanne. Prizes are at the ready, poised for what reputedly toxic element did Nobel Prize winner Glenn Seaborg keep in a cigar box? Not medicinal. Hector Garcia Martin for the win.
Plutonium?
It is plutonium. Way to go, Hector. Bravo. It's still there, and it'll be here for a very long time. Okay. Are we ready? Michele Rosso.
Climate change is one of the most pressing issues of our time. We all agree on that, right? But as scientists, we can do something more than agreeing on it. We can actually solve the problem. And the problem, in this case, are man-made CO2 emissions. In the US, every year, half of the CO2 emissions are produced by the burning of fossil fuel for energy production. Now, imagine if it were possible to produce energy without releasing CO2 into the air. What if I tell you that a technology capable of doing just that already exists? It's called a chemical looping reactor, in short, CLR. Small CLRs are already operating in various national labs and seem very promising, but there's a problem. Scaling these small devices all the way up to industrial scale proved very difficult. Anybody in this room who ever built a model airplane knows that it's not the same thing as building a Boeing 747. Right now, we have CLRs that are pretty much my size, the size of the little human there. In 10 years, we would like to have a CLR that is as large as a 5-story building or even larger. Now, one way to go about it would be to build a lot of intermediate scale prototypes and experiment on them. But this is very costly and is very time consuming, and clearly climate change is not waiting for us. So how can we do to speed up the development process of this technology? The answer is numerical simulations. In my research, I leverage the power of the next generation supercomputer to simulate large-scale CLRs in different sizes and designs without actually having to build any of those. The impact of this kind of research on cost, development time, and knowledge gain would be huge. So far, we couldn't do this kind of large-scale simulations because simply we couldn't afford this kind of computational power. But now that the next generation of supercomputer can run billions of calculations per second, we can finally simulate large-scale CLRs. Being able to run such realistic simulation will speed up the development of this technology by a great deal. And this will give us cleaner and cheaper energy within the next 10 years or so. Thank you.
Thank you, Michele. Trivia buffs, up your game. Which Berkeley Lab scientist was able to restore a 128-year-old recording of Alexander Graham Bell's voice? Anybody? Come on. He's probably sitting in this room.
Yeah, Pearl matter? Pearl
No.
matter? No.
But nice try, though. Come on. Be brave. Want his initials? Anybody? CH? Oh, Teresa's a ringer. Okay, Teresa. Do it. Do it. Carl Haber. Thanks for coming to our rescue, Teresa Duque. Okay, then. Lori Steffi.
What makes up the universe that surrounds us? Right now, scientists estimate that our universe is made up of over 70% dark energy. Well, what is dark energy? We call it dark because we don't know. That's over 2/3 of our universe that we don't understand, which last I checked for most classes is a failing grade. Fortunately, we as humans are not content to sit back and shrug our shoulders. This is why, right now, at this very moment, the DESI experiment, the Dark Energy Spectroscopic Instrument, is being designed and installed in the Mayall telescope, which is in the gas can, in Kitt Peak, Arizona. Next year, when the instrument comes online, the DESI instrument will take pictures of over 30 million galaxies and create the largest, most detailed map of the universe ever created. All of that data has to go somewhere, and it's going to come right here to NERSC. DESI will send their images to the world's 10th fastest supercomputer, which is pretty cool, to Cori, which you see is the engine, to be processed as fast as possible. The problem with software is that it almost never runs fast out of the box, and it requires a lot of tuning, just like a fancy sports car, to really extract good performance. To make things even more complicated, the DESI team write their software in Python, which is a fabulous programming language, but one that is harder to squeeze performance out of than more traditional languages. So, this is where I come in. You can think of me as basically a mechanic for the DESI code. I use engine diagnostics, or software profiling tools, to go through and find the engine clogs, or to find places in the software that are running slowly. Then, we use tricks to try to speed them up. One trick we have used is called just-in-time compiling, where we find a small piece of code that we know is slow,
we compile it when we encounter it, and then when we hit it again, it's way faster. Another trick we use is to pre-compute and store important values, and then look them up later. If you're doing something 10,000 times, not having to recalculate it over and over again can really save you a lot. So, using tricks like these, we have sped up the DESI code by a factor of 2, which is pretty good, especially considering we're using Python, which is a new language for supercomputing. This means that the DESI scientists can have the results earlier in the day, maybe by breakfast instead of lunch or dinner, which gives them more time to plan their coming night of observing. It also means that they can spend more time helping us figure out the 2/3 of the universe that we call dark energy, so that we as humanity can all start passing our universe class. Thank you.
Thanks, Lori. Okay, trivia. We're getting down to, just 3 more prizes. Get ready. This female scientist, Professor Emerita in the College of Chemistry at UC Berkeley, worked on the Manhattan Project at Los Alamos, awarded the National Medal of Science for Chemistry in 1997. She continued her groundbreaking research in radioactive elements at Berkeley Lab during her Cal tenure. She was one of the researchers who confirmed the existence of seaborgium, element 106.
We got one.
Darlene Hoffman.
Darlene Hoffman. Thank you very much. Timur Taknaganov.
Imagine that you can have the history of our universe play out in front of your eyes as a movie. From the Big Bang, through the cosmic dark ages, to the formation of the first stars, to the multitude of galaxies that we observe now. Modern cosmology, the study of the universe as a whole, is developing this origin story, enhancing our understanding of where everything that we see comes from. Our recent progress in understanding the origins of the universe is due not only to the new and better telescopes and satellites, but also due to the computer simulations that allow us to model the evolution of the universe at very fine scales. With simulation models, we can create multiple virtual universes with different properties, play them out as movies, and compare the final frames of these movies to the observations of the universe that we live in to see if they match. That sounds great, doesn't it? Well, there is a small caveat here. Running these cosmological simulations takes a really long time, even with the big supercomputers that we have. Generating a large number of these virtual universe movies with the level of accuracy that matches the accuracy of our observations could take years. Can we do better? Yes, with the help of computational science. As a computational scientist, I developed mathematical methods to approximate the results of the expensive cosmological simulations. Combining the results from a small number of highly accurate simulations into a statistical model, I can then approximate the result of a simulation of a universe with slightly different properties without actually running that simulation. In this way, I can try out many possibilities, compare the results that I get to the observations of our universe, and pick the best candidates to run the full cosmological simulation. What's even better, the more of these full simulations I collect, the better my statistical model becomes in predicting new results. With the help of the methods that I develop, we can now take full advantage of the computer simulations to study the history of our universe. One day, we will be able to replay this whole story as a movie, and what's even better, to see what lies ahead.
Thank you, Timur. All right, it's your last chance, I think. Which Berkeley Lab scientist was instrumental in discovering that a large asteroid caused a major extinction among the dinosaurs? Which one? What do you think? Louis Alvarez?
He said, who is Alvarez?
Who was it?
He thought it was.
In the form of a question. Very good. He gets extra points. Should we give it to him?
Sure.
Okay, good. Walter Alvarez. Of course. One of the Alvarez brothers. Okay, then. Just was fate that somebody should have a last name ending with a Z, and that would be anybody? Kate Shalnina.
My dream is to change the way we grow our food by replacing dangerous chemicals and pesticides with beneficial microbes that already exist in soil. Today, we have to use fertilizers and pesticides to grow enough food. And this comes at a price. The chemicals contaminate water we drink, food we eat, and degrade our soils. But it doesn't have to be this way. Nature has already found an ingenious solution for us. As you may know, there are millions of tiny organisms or microbes living around us. And I study how we can harness power of these microbes to grow healthier crops and restore degraded soils. Plants and microbes have been there since the beginning and learned how to be good neighbors. Plants release a lot of different molecules into the soil, and microbes that live in the soil come to feed on these molecules. Think about plant root as a buffet with many different choices. Plant attracts beneficial microbes by providing them with delicious molecules in this buffet. In return for the food they are provided, microbes supply plants with nutrients, protect against drought and pathogens. Unfortunately, we do not know how plants and microbes communicate and work together. But what we know that this communication is based on their chemistries. Knowing this, I study how we can use plants' own chemistry to help nourish beneficial microbes in soil to help us to grow healthier crops and restore damaged soils. My research showed when it comes to food, microbes have preferences, just like you and I. Some microbes like eating sugars, while others prefer proteins. I discovered that plant beneficial microbes particularly like eating aromatic acids, even though there are thousands of sweeter molecules offered by plant. This finding is just the first step to understand how plant conducts an orchestra of beneficial microbes that help them prosper. If we further understand how plants attract beneficial microbes, we could harness nature to grow better crops and feed the planet.
Thanks, Kate, for finishing strong. Lee, now it's your time to mark your ballots. It is a hard choice, but first, let's give it up for all of our finalists. That was incredible. And as you deliberate, fill in your ballot, select but one. We'll collect those votes as you depart. Don't leave too soon. Just a few thank yous. This event would not have happened without the Berkeley Lab Postdoc program, led by an army of one in Meg Rodriguez, and it wouldn't have happened without Meg. Come on, Meg! Yeah! Stand, Meg! Yeah. Yeah. All right. Meg said she was inspired by research scientist and UC Berkeley assistant professor Rebecca Albridgel and senior HR division partner Dina Michael. So are you around? Come on, stand right up. Thank you. She's already standing. The support of the lab directorate, particularly Deputy for Research Horst Simon, who couldn't be here today, and his assistant senior advisor, Bill Johansson, were important in making this happen as well. And our colleagues at the University of California, San Francisco, who really blazed trails in terms of slamming, as well as our colleagues at Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory. Thank you very much, Chris. Okay, also, there were 32 to start. We heard 12 today, and there were a lot of people who worked hard to screen those individuals, and I'm going to tell you who they are now. And they're going to get lavish gifts. That would be, and if you are here, please stand to be acknowledged. Anne Almgren of Computational Research Division, CRD. That'd be Brett Helms from the Molecular Foundry. Brett, are you in the house? Okay. Francesca Maria Toma of Chemical Sciences and the Center for Artificial Photosynthesis, JCAP. No Francesca. Russell Carrington from the Intellectual Property Office, IPO. Russell. Okay, these are going on eBay. Patrick Schaefer from the Advanced Light Source, ALS. The good kind of ALS. Okay. Sandy Chin from Earth and Environmental Sciences area. Okay, I know Greta Large is here, a science communicator in her own right from Biosciences area. Thank you, Greta. And special thanks for all the other volunteers who helped make this possible today, and the Corps of Ambassadors who've been inspired today to go on and communicate the importance of public science supported by the stakeholders, the taxpayers. Thank you very much. And with your enthusiastic support moving forward, we would like to do that, host another one of these next year. Are you with us? Yeah? All right then. Now what you've really been waiting for, and that is, everybody mark their ballots first, because you're not going to be allowed to leave the room unless you do it. And everybody out there in the Twittosphere, I hope you've been doing that too. So you're going to follow the balloons all the way to the cafeteria patio where there will be refreshments. Really, refreshments. The good stuff, I'm telling you. So we hope to see you momentarily. Meg, we want to say something else? It's high tech, perforated. So follow the balloons, have some refreshments, judges deliberate. We'll see you shortly at the cafeteria patio with the big decisions. Thank you very much, everybody. So let's hear one more time your appreciation for these people putting it out there. Come on, everybody.
Can we also get a big round of applause for David for the MC?
Thank you. Okay, now it's the awkward time that there's a chance of making mistakes. No envelopes here. We're going to rely on digital technology, which we know never fails. Okay, you, the people, have spoken. And what have you said exactly? Don't you hate it when facial recognition doesn't work? Actually, it's probably a good thing. So the People's Choice Award goes to Michele Rosso. Bravo, bravo, bravo. Okay. Avanti.
Thank you.
Second place. Sean Rockenoff. Give up for Sean. Glasses off, Sean. Come on. Let him see your eyes. There you go. Excellent. Just got here, Amazon Prime. Good job. For our first prize in this year's 2018 Slam, Berkeley Lab Slam. Don't try to cash this check. Michelle, you signed it, right?
I signed it.
So it should be good. Okay. Give it up for Sinead Griffith! Thank you very much, everybody. Here's till next year. Any other announcements? There's more. Hold on, hold on, hold on. Steady on. It's a nice tie, you know. It's the only tie. Okay. Okay, tension mounts. Do it.
On behalf of the Berkeley Lab Postdoc Association and all the finalists, we would like to give a great thank you to Meg for all her efforts and also for everything she did today for our career development and many, many more. So thank you, Meg, and long time break.
Now you drink.
All right, stick around. Show off your communication skills.